Hello, I'm Hussein, and welcome to the second episode of the D5 Render Crash Course series. Before we start today's tutorial, let's quickly review what we learned in the previous episode. In episode 1, we installed and set up D5 Render, explored the main parts of the user interface, and learned how to import our projects directly from the modeling software using LiveSync and create a connection between the two applications. Now that our project is ready inside D5, it's time to move on to one of the most important parts of the software, the stage where our basic model starts turning into a realistic and high-quality scene. In this episode, we'll explore the material library and learn how to apply different materials to our project. After that, we'll move on to assets and see how we can quickly bring our scene to life by adding trees, plants, furniture, cars, people, and hundreds of ready-to-use objects. By the end of this episode, you'll have a better understanding of how to transform a simple model into a much more realistic and professional-looking environment. So, without wasting any time, let's get started. We'll start this part by exploring materials. For this tutorial, I've imported a simple project so we can test different types of materials and easily see how they affect the scene. If you look closely, you may notice that the shadows and lighting currently look a little unrealistic. The reason is that, in the display settings, the render quality option is set to smooth. If we change it to precise, you can immediately see that the shadows and lighting become much more accurate and natural. We talked about this setting in the previous episode, but I think the difference is much easier to notice here. It gives you a better understanding of why this option is important. Now, to edit a material, simply click on the eyedropper icon and then select the material you want to modify directly from the scene. As soon as you select it, the material settings will appear in the panel on the right side. From there, you can adjust all of its properties, such as color, texture, roughness, reflection, and other settings. But before we start exploring the material settings, we first need to apply a material to our model. To do that, click on the Assets button. This will open the Assets library, which contains a huge collection of materials, 3D models, vegetation, furniture, vehicles, characters, and many other ready-to-use elements. Now, let's move on to the material library. As you can see, there is a huge collection of materials here, organized into different categories. You can find everything from wood and stone to metal, glass, fabric, concrete, and many other types of materials. Some of these materials are available in the free version, but many of the higher quality and more professional materials are only available for pro users. If you're looking to create more realistic renders, the pro subscription can be really valuable because it gives you access to a much larger library of high quality resources. Using these materials is also very simple. Just click on the material you want to use to download it, then drag and drop it onto the object you want to apply it to, exactly like what I'm doing right now. However, there is one issue that you might run into here. As you can see, the material I applied has been assigned to all of the objects. The reason is that the model was imported from Rhino using LiveSync, and D5 recognized these parts as a shared material instead of separate objects. Fortunately, fixing this issue is very simple, and it's exactly the same method we use in software like Lumion. All you need to do is go back to Rhino and assign a simple material with a different color to each part that you want to have a separate material later. These materials don't need to be realistic or have any specific colors. The only purpose is to separate different parts of the model from each other. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. Since LiveSync is active, these changes are updated in D5 in real time. Now, I can select each part individually and apply a different material to it. For example, I'll select a metal material for this sphere. As you can see, the variety of materials is really impressive, and you can find suitable options for almost any type of project. One of the great advantages of D5 is that its library is updated online, with new and high-quality materials being added regularly. For the floor, I'll choose a marble material so we can see the difference more clearly. Now, to better understand the quality and behavior of these materials under different lighting conditions, I'll slightly change the sun angle from the Environment tab. Later in this course, we'll fully explore environment settings, lighting, and sun control. But for now, without going into too much detail, just keep in mind that you can use this section to change the sun position, adjust the direction of light and shadows, and evaluate your materials in different lighting conditions. Now, let's take a look at the material settings. As we mentioned earlier, if you click on the eyedropper icon and then select one of the materials in the scene, its settings will appear in the panel on the right side, where you can fully customize and edit it. For this tutorial, we'll explore the settings of this marble material on the floor. Let's start with base color. Here, you can change the main color of the material. For example, if you have a white marble material, you can easily change it to red marble, black marble, or any other color. However, to achieve a more realistic result, it's better to choose a color that matches the texture of the material. Next, we have normal. The normal map allows you to add small surface details such as bumps and small imperfections without increasing the number of polygons in your model. Here you can adjust the strength of this effect, and if needed, replace the normal map with another one. After that, we have specular. Specular controls how much light is reflected on the surface. In other words, it determines how strong the highlights appear on the material. This value can be adjusted manually, and you can also use a map to control reflections differently across different areas of the surface. The next option is roughness. This parameter controls how rough or smooth the surface is. Lower roughness values make the surface shinier with clearer reflections. Higher values make the surface more matte, and the reflections become softer and more scattered. Next, we have metallic. This option determines whether the material behaves like a metal or not. For materials such as iron, aluminum, or gold, the metallic value is usually high. But for materials like wood, stone, or plastic, it normally remains at 0. The next option is AO, or ambient occlusion. AO makes areas where less light reaches, such as corners and gaps, appear slightly darker. This helps create more depth and makes the details of the model look more realistic. After that, we have height. The height map is used to create more realistic surface depth by adding bumps and indentations. Unlike normal maps, which only simulate the appearance of surface details, height maps can create a stronger sense of depth. Here you can adjust its intensity and also replace the height map if needed. If you enable the emissive option, the material becomes a light-emitting surface and starts producing light by itself. This feature is commonly used for creating screens, LED strips, neon signs, and any other type of glowing surface. Finally, at the bottom, we have the reflection caustics option. This feature helps simulate light patterns created by reflection and reflection on glossy or transparent surfaces more naturally. For example, the way light passes through water or glass and creates reflections on a floor or wall. Now, let's move on to the UV section. This part controls how the texture is placed on the model. In the stretch section, you can control the texture tiling on the X and Y axes. The higher the repetition value, the more times the texture will repeat across the surface, making the pattern appear smaller and more detailed. If the link icon is enabled, changing one axis will automatically adjust the other axis proportionally. But if you disable the link, you can control each axis independently. The same concept applies to offset, but instead of changing the scale of the texture, it changes the position of the texture on the surface. In the rotate section, you can rotate the texture by any angle you want, exactly like what you can see on the screen right now. The Tri-Planar option is also a very useful feature. When you enable this option, D5 does not rely only on the model's UV coordinates. Instead, it projects the texture onto the object from 3 different directions. This helps reduce texture stretching and distortion, especially on models with poor UV mapping or complex surfaces. The UV Randomizer option is another feature that helps make the scene look more natural. If multiple objects use the same material, the texture pattern may appear exactly the same on every object, creating a repetitive look. By enabling UV Randomizer, D5 slightly changes the position or rotation of the texture on each object, reducing repetition and creating a more realistic result. In the advanced section, there are also a few other useful features. For example, by enabling round corner, sharp edges on the model can be automatically softened and appear slightly rounded. In the real world, almost no object has perfectly sharp edges, so this option helps make models look more realistic without the need to modify the actual geometry. Next to it, you can adjust the radius value to control the amount of rounding and achieve the exact result you want. The last option we'll look at here is limit color bleeding. Normally, when light hits a coloured surface, some of that colour is reflected onto nearby objects. For example, a red wall can slightly transfer its red colour onto a white floor. If you feel that this effect is too strong in your scene, enabling limit colour bleeding allows you to reduce the intensity of this colour transfer and achieve a more controlled result. As you can see, this library provides a huge collection of different materials, from simple materials to more advanced ones with different physical properties and behaviours. You can choose the right option depending on the requirements of your project. As we mentioned earlier, by enabling the emissive option, a material can become a light source and emit light by itself. To make this effect easier to see, I'll change the sun angle and turn the scene into a nighttime environment. We'll fully explore lighting settings, environment controls, and the day and night cycle in the environment section later in this course. For now, you can simply go to the environment tab and adjust the sun angle, just like I'm doing right now. With emissive enabled, you can adjust the intensity of the light and also change its color. There are two ways to choose the light color. You can either select a specific color manually or use the temperature option to control the color temperature and create warmer or cooler lighting, exactly like what you can see on the screen. Another important material feature is the base color map section. Here, you can completely replace the original texture of the material with your own custom texture. If you have a collection of PBR textures, you can also use them here and assign different maps such as base color, normal, roughness, metallic, height, and other texture maps to create a fully customized material. Personally, I don't use this feature very often because the D5 material library is already very complete and high quality, and it usually provides everything I need for most projects. However, if you have a specific material in mind that is not available in the library, you can easily create your own custom material and fully personalize it. Overall, you can find almost any type of material you need for an architectural or design project here, from different types of stone, wood, metal, concrete, glass, plastic, and leather, to more specialized materials like water, snow, grass, and other surfaces that simulate realistic physical behaviors. This wide variety makes it possible to quickly find and apply the right material for most projects without needing additional external resources. For now, we'll stop here with the material section, and later we'll come back to some additional settings and useful tips. As we mentioned earlier, the Assets library is not limited to materials only. If you select the Model tab at the top of this panel, you'll enter a huge collection of ready-to-use 3D models that you can directly add to your projects. Here, you can find almost everything you need to create an architectural scene, from different types of trees and plants to human characters, vehicles, interior and urban furniture, and many other useful objects. Just like the materials section, some of these models are available for free, while some of the higher quality assets require a pro subscription. To add a model to your scene, simply click on the object you want to use to start the download. You can also select multiple models at the same time for downloading, and the preparation time depends on your internet speed. After the download is complete, simply drag and drop the model into your scene, exactly like what I'm doing right now. After adding any object, you can select it and use the V shortcut that we introduced in the previous episode to move, rotate, or scale it. Now, let's do the same thing with a character. As you can see, D5 provides a large collection of realistic human characters that are ready to use in your projects. These characters can add scale, life, and a more realistic feeling to your scenes. Without any additional modeling or preparation, you can directly use them in your renders. All you need to do is choose the right character and place it in the desired position in your scene. In addition to characters, the models section also includes a complete collection of vehicles. You can find everything from cars and motorcycles to airplanes, helicopters, boats, trucks, and even more unique objects like balloons. For example, I'll add this Ford model to the scene. With this simple workflow, you can quickly transform an empty scene into a detailed environment and focus more on the design and final render quality instead of spending time modeling secondary objects. Now, just like materials, when you click on any of these assets, you'll have access to a set of specific settings depending on the type of object, and you can customize them. For example, with this tree that we added to the scene, we can adjust the seasonal settings. This means we can control which time of year the tree represents, such as a spring look with green leaves, an autumn look with yellow and orange leaves, or even a winter version with fewer leaves. This feature allows you to change the appearance of the tree with just a few parameters, without needing multiple versions of the same model for different seasons. The same idea applies to characters. For example, by selecting this character, we can change the color of the clothes and make the appearance match the style of our project. Of course, these settings are not the same for every asset. Depending on the type of object, you'll have different customization options. Each model can have its own specific settings. However, when it comes to vehicles, these options become even more advanced. For cars, you can decide whether the model should be dynamic or not. This means you can choose whether it should have movement and animation, or simply be used as a static object in the scene. You can also choose whether the car has a driver or not. There is even an option to select the driver's position, whether it's on the left side or the right side. In addition, you can turn the car lights on or off, and if the lights are enabled, you can adjust their intensity as well. You can also change the body color of the vehicle. This level of detail in asset customization is really impressive, because it means ready-made models are not just fixed objects. Instead, you can easily adjust them and make them fit the specific needs of your project. Besides 3D models, there is another very useful feature inside the assets library called interior parallax. Interior parallax is a technique used to simulate interior spaces behind glass. Instead of fully modeling the inside of a building or a storefront, this feature uses a special material or surface that creates the illusion of depth and a realistic interior space behind the glass when the viewing angle changes. Using it is also very simple. Just like any other asset, you can select it and place it directly into your scene. As you can see, the result is very impressive. Without the need to model the interior of a storefront or behind a window, create materials, and increase the project complexity, we can achieve a realistic-looking interior space very quickly. Another very useful section inside the assets library is the Decals section. Decals are 2D elements that can be applied directly onto surfaces to add small but realistic details to a scene. These can include things like dirt marks, footprints, road markings, wall graffiti, cracks, or any other surface details. For example, I'll select this decal, wait for it to download, and then place it on the surface I want. That's all there is to it. We can also use objects like this manhole cover and place it directly on a street surface. Or, if we want to add more detail to a wall, we can use a dirt or stain decal. After placing it on a surface, we can treat it like a regular object and move it, scale it, and adjust its exact position. These small details may not seem very important at first, but they are exactly what helps a render move away from a purely computer-generated look and gives it a more realistic feeling. Now let's go back to the material section. I've changed the scene so we can explore a few more materials and also test some of the features from the asset library. First, let's add the materials we need to the model. For these side sections, I'll choose a stone material and apply it to the surface. After applying the material, we can use different settings to adjust its appearance and make it closer to the result we want. One of the things I do to make the result look more realistic is using the round corner feature. With this option, the sharp edges of the model become slightly softer and rounded, which makes the light reflections on the surface look more natural. As you can see, even with this small adjustment, both the material and the model look much more realistic. Now let's consider this area as a swimming pool. I'll go to the water category in the material library, select one of the water materials, and apply it to this surface. In fact, it doesn't really matter which option you choose, because D5 provides very high quality water materials. As you can see, the result is impressive. The behavior of light, reflections, transparency, and even the sense of water depth are physically simulated, giving us a realistic water surface without the need for complicated adjustments. Now, for this area, let's add a grass material. After selecting the grass material, we can adjust the texture scale using the stretch settings on the right panel to match the texture size with the scale of our project. You might wonder why this grass doesn't look raised and three-dimensional like real grass. The reason is that this material is not designed to create actual grass. It is only being used as a surface layer. To create realistic grass with volume and 3D details, it's better to use vegetation and grass assets instead of just a simple material. Now, let's take a look at one of the most exciting features in D5 Render, scatter. There are two ways to access scatter. You can either open it from the top menu of the software, or go to the asset library and select the scatter tab. First, I'll click on the lawn option. Here you can see a large collection of different vegetation types that can be used to create grass, bushes, and other ground cover plants. The variety in this section is really impressive, giving you many different options to choose from. I'll select one of these options, wait for it to download, and then apply it to the surface I want. After selecting the surface, in the Create Scatter Area section, I'll click on Create to generate the scatter. As you can see, the result looks great. The level of detail, density, and the way the plants are distributed look very natural. One thing I personally really like about this feature is the variety and the speed at which you can create vegetation. In just a few seconds, you can transform a simple surface into a much more alive and realistic environment. One important thing to know is that D5 treats each scatter as a separate object. This means, just like other objects, you can manage it from the list on the left side. For example, you can hide it, lock it, or adjust its settings whenever you need. If you click on the scatter itself, its specific settings will appear. Here you can control different parameters such as vegetation density, size, distribution, and other properties. Each scatter also has its own settings depending on the type of vegetation or models being used. I recommend experimenting with these options to understand how each setting affects the final result. Another great advantage of D5 is its use of modern rendering technologies, such as ray tracing. You can see its effect right here. The reflections of the trees on the water surface, the light refraction, and the detailed reflections make the scene look much more realistic. Now, let's try another scatter. This time, I want to create a forest area at the back of the scene. For this, I'll go back to Rhino and create a simple surface in this area. Since LiveSync is active, this surface will immediately appear inside D5 as well. For the base surface, I'll assign a grass material. Now, I'll return to the scatter section, but this time, instead of lawn, I'll choose the forest option. I'll select the first option, choose the surface we created, and click on Create. And as you can see, within just a few moments, a complete forest has been created. Now, we can adjust this forest based on the needs of our project. For example, we can change the density of the trees, their size, distribution, and many other parameters to achieve exactly the result we want. But a forest doesn't look natural with trees alone. I also want to add a layer of ground vegetation underneath the trees to make it more realistic. So I'll repeat the same process again, this time using lawn, and create a vegetation layer across the forest area. And that's it. With this simple workflow, we created a complete forest environment with different types of vegetation in just a few minutes. It's interesting to think that around 10 or 15 years ago, creating environments like this was a very heavy and time-consuming process for many users. Only a limited number of artists who were experienced with software like 3ds Max and specialized plugins could create such detailed natural environments. But today, with tools like D5 Render, these capabilities have become much faster and more accessible. Instead of spending most of the time dealing with complex technical processes, designers can focus more on their ideas and the creative side of their projects. Now that we are familiar with scatter, let's move on to the next section, particle. Just like scatter, there are two ways to access particle. You can open it from the top menu of the software or access it through the asset library. But before we start using it, let's first understand what particle is actually used for. The particle system is designed to simulate large numbers of small and moving elements. These are elements that would not be practical to create manually or model one by one. This section is mainly used for creating environmental effects and special visual effects in your scenes. For example, you can add rain, snow, dust, smoke, fog, fire, sparks, and many other similar effects. For example, I'll select this particle effect and add it to the scene. The workflow is exactly the same as adding a regular object. You simply select it, wait for it to download, and then use drag and drop to place it in the desired position. But the main difference is that this is not a static 3D model. Instead, it is a dynamic system that simulates the behavior of a large number of particles. For example, if we want to create a small area of fog inside an architectural space, we can use a fog particle effect and only affect the specific area we need without making the entire scene foggy. We can also use this feature to create local effects such as smoke, steam, dust, or even fireworks. For example, we can add a firework effect to the scene and create a natural animated effect without the need to create any animation manually. This feature is especially useful for creating cinematic scenes, architectural animations, and short visual shots. Now, let's move on to the population section. Population is one of the interesting features in D5 for quickly duplicating and managing assets in your scene. In this section, we have several different tools, and the first one is Brush. Brush is basically a painting tool that allows you to place different assets across a surface by simply moving your mouse. Instead of adding every tree, plant, or object individually and adjusting its position manually, you can paint across the desired area like a brush and create them within that region. For example, I can select one or multiple tree models, plants, or any other assets, and then place them in the scene by moving the brush across the surface. In the brush settings, you can control different parameters. Size determines the size of the brush, meaning the area affected by each mouse movement. Radius controls the spread area of the objects. Intensity determines how strongly the brush affects the surface, meaning how many assets are created each time you paint. Also, if you click on the eraser icon, the brush tool changes into an erase mode, allowing you to remove the objects you have already created. The next option in population is the scatter tool. This tool is very similar to the main scatter feature in D5, but here it is located inside population and is designed for quickly distributing multiple assets across a specific surface. For example, you can select different types of plants, rocks, bushes, or any other models, and define how they should be distributed across an area. D5 will automatically place these models within the selected region, and you can control settings such as quantity, density, scale, and distribution pattern. This tool is especially useful when you want to create a large area with a variety of assets and don't want to adjust every single object manually. The next option is Path. With Path, you can duplicate one or multiple models along a specific route. For example, you can create a row of trees along a pathway, place streetlights along a road, or distribute a collection of objects along a curved line. First, you create the desired path, and then you select the assets that you want to place along that path. In the path settings, you have several different options. In the content section, you can add or remove assets. Density controls the number of objects placed along the path. Rotation controls the direction and orientation of the objects. Random rotation adds random rotation variations to create a more natural result. Random offset and random spacing are used to create controlled randomness, so the objects don't look perfectly aligned and artificial. The spacing option controls the distance between each object, and random seed is used to generate different random variations. At the top of this section, we also have the edit option, which allows you to modify the path itself. For example, if you select a point on the path, you can change its type from linear to curve. In this mode, the point becomes a curved section, and by adjusting the handle length, you can control the amount of curvature. The next option in this section is Dynamic Path. This tool works very similarly to the regular path feature, but it is designed for moving objects. With Dynamic Path, you can create movement routes for characters, vehicles, or animals. First, you define the movement path, and then you select the models that you want to move along it. For example, I'll select this Porsche vehicle. In the settings panel on the right, you can control different parameters. Lane count allows you to define the number of movement lanes. You can also choose whether the path is one-way or two-way, and whether vehicles should move toward each other from opposite directions. Density controls the number of vehicles on the path. Speed adjusts the movement speed of the vehicles. Random spacing creates more natural and irregular distances between vehicles. Random color changes the vehicle colors randomly. You can even adjust more detailed settings, such as the driver position, whether the headlights are on or off, and the intensity of the lights. The same workflow is also available for characters. You can create a path and define a route for people to walk along. As you can see, the character animations are very smooth and add much more life to the scene. The character settings are very similar to vehicles, but naturally, some options are different. For example, there is no option for vehicle lights, but settings like default speed are available to control the walking speed of the characters. These features make D5 more than just a rendering tool. They allow you to create dynamic and living architectural scenes with movement, animation, and realistic environments. Alright, we'll stop this part here. In this episode, we explored the assets library and its different sections, from the material library and material settings to ready-made 3D models, characters, vehicles, decals, interior parallax, scatter, particle, and the population tools. We saw how these features allow us to prepare our scenes much faster and with much more detail without spending a lot of time on manual modeling. With these tools, we can transform a simple project into a realistic and lively environment. In the next episode of this tutorial series, we'll move on to one of the most important parts of D5 Render: environment, lighting, and terrain. We'll explore environment settings, sunlight control, sky settings, weather conditions, terrain creation and editing, and the tools you need to create more natural and realistic scenes. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this episode. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like the video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming tutorials. If you have any questions, suggestions, or experiences with D5 Render, feel free to share them in the comments. As always, I'll do my best to answer your questions. See you in the next video. Take care.